I have a weird feeling Terence Crawford is about to make Canelo look easy. Now, of course, a lot of you guys are going to be thinking, hey, you're crazy. Why do you even think that? Well, to be honest, the reason why I believe that is genuinely because something about Terence Crawford, I don't know what about it, but it's reminded me a lot of like the Spence fight. The Spence fight, there was so many people saying that Errol Spence was too big for him, Errol Spence was going to hurt him, and he's going to muscle him around. And that's almost the exact same thing that's happening with Canelo. And to be honest, I don't see what everyone's talking about with the weight when it comes to Canelo. I think if anything, Crawford's going to be able to muscle him around. And so many people were in shock when Terence Crawford was able to push Errol Spence like far away from the ring and almost made him fly out the ring. But I also think that's just genuinely because of a background of wrestling. They know how to use their body weight pretty well. They have already the strength because of wrestling. And of course in clinches, they're going to be able to out-muscle. So I don't think the muscle thing is going to be a big factor. I think that should be just so obvious Terence Crawford is going to be better in clinches and muscling around because of wrestling. It's literally just because of wrestling. But ultimately though, during that Spence fight of that whole fight week, I was as well like mentioning like way back that I felt Terence Crawford was going to make Errol Spence look easy. And at the time that fight was like a 50-50 fight. And I was just like fully confident Terence Crawford was going to make Errol Spence look very easy. Now I was just saying like in the first 2 rounds it's going to be slow and then he's going to download the data very quickly. And well, I was right to that extent, but if anything, it happened in the first round. He downloaded all the data in the first round and then dropped Errol Spence in the second, and then from there it just became an obliteration. And so far, that is what I'm thinking might happen for Canelo and Crawford. I think Crawford is going to be able to muscle around Canelo. I don't think Canelo has the strength to even push Terence Crawford as much as people really like to think. They're exactly the same size and they look big and identical to each other. They don't look very different from each other. And they're exactly the same size. I also don't think Canelo is going to be able to muscle around Crawford as everyone's saying that it's going to be. I really think Terence Crawford, the approach that he took against Errol Spence, because I'm sure like they took the approach of Errol Spence was going to be heavier. So I think the approach that they are going to take against Canelo is going to be similar to the Errol Spence fight, where they're just going to be very tight and stick by the jab. And then while they do that, they're going to end up moving Canelo around, most likely just by clinching him and just like out muscling him and walking him down. Because I feel like Terence Crawford is sort of giving away a game plan too on what he's doing. Like in the press conference, he ended up saying that he was going to walk down Canelo exactly how he did in the face-off. And of course, a lot of people won't like take much of it. But I don't know. I think Terence Crawford has a chip on his shoulder. And usually when he had that against Errol Spence. And he ended up walking down Errol Spence and just destroying him. And I think exactly that might end up happening to Canelo. I think he's going to walk down Canelo and just put a lot of pressure on him. And I think he's going to come in with also a very counter-heavy approach. If you watch Canelo versus Skull, of course, like that fight sucks. That was actually fight of the year. What am I talking about? That's fight of the year. There was a moment where Canelo misses his shots and William Skull was able to actually counter him. So I think with moments like that, I think if anything, Canelo's reaction speed has gone slower. And I know a lot of people also mention that you know, Canelo's declining, and I 100% could agree with that, because the opponents he's been fighting, they're just not on that level. And those opponents are like Munguia and Berlanga. They're probably like one of the worst fighters I've ever seen. Munguia apparently popped for PEDs, and then Berlanga is just terrible. So I think it just looks horrible on Canelo that guys like that are not even that great, you ended up basically having the masses and the public say that, hey, it was a good fight, it was a scrap, they gave Canelo a tough fight. If anything, of course the Berlanga fight was dominant, but it was another one of those Munguia type of fights. And even Munguia was that kind of fight too, where it was just in the pocket, throwing little exchanges, and that was all it was. And if anything, I would even say for Canelo, fighting those types of fighters, especially when it's like you're fighting Crawford now, you're fighting someone that's near your weight, natural weight. Who knows like how much Crawford naturally weighs, but apparently I'm hearing like he's potentially 180 something. And Canelo as well, like he probably weighs possibly like around 190, I would guess. Like Canelo's pretty big, but Crawford as well weighing 180, and then with like a wrestling background of able to out muscle people, I think that's just gonna come into play. I think he is gonna be able to out muscle Canelo. I don't know what's with people saying that like he'll out muscle. I think if anything, Canelo's best shot is like maybe outbox him. I think it's mostly that he has to throw big power shots and, you know, push him around and catch him clean. But I think what Crawford's gonna do is he's gonna take the approach that he took against the Spence fight, which the Spence fight he took like a heavy jab approach and had a tighter guard, and everything about him which is a lot tighter and a lot more focused on if he pushes you, you're gonna have to be a juggernaut and just throw. And I think that's exactly what's probably gonna happen with the Canelo fight. He's gonna take the same approach, and if anything, the Errol Spence fight, he took that like tough guard, high guard approach and slightly moving approach, but he was also a very sharp counter puncher in that kind of fight to counter a big puncher that everyone was saying that Errol Spence was, that he was big and he was gonna land hard and it was gonna be very powerful. But that's exactly what everyone was saying with Canelo. Of course, Canelo actually holds weight to that. Errol Spence holds weight to it, but it's just like it's not comparable in a way, if you can say that. But like Canelo has proven that he can actually knock you out, and I do think in this fight 100% I do think Canelo is gonna drop Terence Crawford, or maybe even hurt him for the first time. I think both guys are gonna get hurt, but I ultimately do think Canelo is gonna get the worst end of it, and I think he's gonna get dropped for the first time of his career. I think he's gonna get caught. Well, Canelo's gonna try to land probably left hooks or something just big. Crawford's gonna just counter him all night, and then I think one of those counters is gonna lead to Canelo getting dropped. It could even come with just a flash knockdown. I even see it happening. A flash knockdown drops Canelo off Crawford's countering ability. And I ultimately do think Crawford's going to take that counter-heavy approach and heavy stance approach and just try to stand his ground and try to walk down Canelo. I think that's actually going to be his approach. And he's going to move every now and again, but it's not going to be big movements. It's going to be similar to the Errol Spence fight. I really do think so. And I do see of course I think it's a big upset if Canelo loses, but it's also a pretty big upset if Crawford loses too, because Crawford is coming up to fight for undisputed for a third time, which I would even say if Crawford were to win that fight, I think he becomes the #1 pound for pound guy, and I don't think anyone passes him up, not even Usyk or Inoue, unless Inoue does the same as well and does it for the third division. Because of course, as of right now, Usyk is obviously like the pound for pound king, probably the #1 guy. I would have Inoue at #2 and then Crawford at 3. But every time those guys fight, it's always swapping between Crawford #1, Inoue #1, Usyk #1, and then it always just swaps and swaps and swaps. So I'm never really upset with what people pound for pound rank for these 3 guys specifically, because I understand for all 3 of them. If you're more of a fan of Crawford, you would have Crawford #1. That's fine. I don't think it's a problem. I would say the only way you can actually have people to disagree with you if you take one of those 3 and put them at #4. You can't even put none of those guys on #4. None of those guys even belong there. So having Shakur Stevenson, even David Benavidez on the pound for pound list is not even acceptable. I even think them, even when the time they had Gervonta Davis before he fought Lamont Roach on the pound for pound rankings was a complete utter joke. Who did Gervonta fight? Just Ryan Garcia, and that was it. And what, Hector Luis Garcia, wow, congratulations to be a PBC guy. It's now PBC. They look like they just hand over a draws for no reason. Look at the Pacquiao fight, just handed over a draw. Even though I would say like Pacquiao won the fight, but either way, they gave Pacquiao a jabroni. And Barrios as well didn't really look that great. He fought against an old head. So I guess it just looks terrible on PBC. PBC is just a sorry promotion nowadays. Is no longer a promotion I even look at and say, hey, it's serious. That's why I'm very happy someone like Turki Al-Sheikh came in. But enough of the tangent. Crawford, I think he's going to be having a very counter-heavy approach against Canelo. I think Canelo's going to come in very, of course, like normal. I think Canelo's going to come in super normal, like average, like the way he normally does. And I think it's going to be Crawford the one adjusting, and he's going to be counter-heavy. He's going to be heavy guarded because someone like Canelo is actually more powerful than someone like Errol Spence. And I ultimately think that Canelo's gonna run into a counter that's gonna hurt him. And I do think as well, like the fight's gonna become tough for both of them, but I just think that it's gonna become one of those, Crawford's gonna walk away with the decision slowly and slowly and slowly. I could see Canelo getting hurt, but I really don't think it's gonna be a stoppage. I think the best way he can even get a stoppage is just by literally doing an Errol Spence type of beating, but I just don't see that happening. but it'd be shocking if it happened. I ultimately wouldn't be surprised if Crawford stops Canelo by just Canelo not getting up on the 10th count, and that's the only way, like basically a knockout. But I don't think he'll flatline. I think it'll just be one of those 10 counts, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I think like with Crawford's counter heavy approach, I'll hurt Canelo. Canelo's gonna back up a bit, but not too much, because he doesn't want to. Obviously Canelo doesn't show weakness technically by backing up like that, and I don't think Crawford's gonna do the approach of Bivol where he's gonna try to throw a bunch of combinations. I think he's gonna try to match Canelo's power and go power for power with him, but he's gonna be throwing counters and a couple of combinations, but majority of it is gonna be counters, and that's something Crawford's really good at, is counter punching, and that's something that Canelo struggles with a little bit. And to even add to that, Canelo struggles with southpaws. Canelo struggled with Billy Joe Saunders, and that was a southpaw, and he also got countered by Saunders. William Skull was a counter puncher, and William Skull was able to catch him a couple of times. I know there's some other possible southpaws Canelo fought that I'm not even naming, but Canelo struggled with southpaws. So if anything, I think it's much closer now, with the fact that now that I thought about that, Canelo struggles with southpaws. So yeah, at this point I'm actually just getting more confident now Crawford might actually finish him, or not finish him. But I think my official prediction, I would even say, I think Crawford probably beats Canelo by a decision, and I do think he'll hurt Canelo and drop him for the first time. But I do think Crawford's gonna get dropped by Canelo for sure. Like I almost see it getting dropped by Canelo, but I don't know. I could see him mostly getting hurt, not dropped, but I can see him getting dropped. But I think he'll most likely get hurt. I think he'll be the one dropping Canelo. He'll probably drop him twice, maybe, but I know for sure he'll probably drop him once, and I think it'll come from a counter shot. And I do think Canelo is gonna get like tuned up, maybe. But overall, my official predictions, I am picking Terence Crawford by decision.